I was going through Google Drive the other day and I noticed that I had a folder full of PDFs that I have downloaded over the years. You know, all those opt-in freebie PDFs that people give out and you download, put on your computer and just forget about. Now, some of them have been useful, some of them I have enjoyed and gone through, others have just sat there. But what actually caught my eye was looking at the design of them. Now, of course, some of these are several years old and, you know, design trends change and people improve their ability to design as well. So I'm not holding it against any of these people, the designs that weren't so great. But I saw it as an opportunity. I thought, why not I pull out some of these PDFs and actually go through how they could be designed better. So today I'm going to pull out a few of these PDFs and walk through how they could be designed better. Now I'm going to remove any logos or names that are on them because I don't want to shame the people that created them. A lot of them created these years ago and they probably improved. Of course, we all look back on our old work and think, oh, that was terrible. And so I don't want to shame them in any way. I just wanted to use these as an example to show you how you can create well-designed PDFs. So let's dive in and have a look at how you can improve the design of your PDFs by looking at some real-life examples. Alright, so here we have a PDF I grabbed. I just erased the name from down the bottom here. So let's have a look at how we could design this better. So instantly you've got that feeling that this is a little bit dated. So we want to freshen it up. So this feels like it's sort of that 2015-ish kind of era. It feels a bit dated. We want it to feel a bit fresh and new and not so busy either. You can see here that the front page there, that initial cover is a little bit busy, a lot's going on. And we're also using fonts like this where it's got the grow there. That's a very dated font too. So we really want it to feel more clean and uncluttered. So let's make a new page. Now let's think about an image we could use. So here it's about growing traffic. So they've got a picture here showing, you know, some stats there of growing traffic. It looks like an office setup. So let's see what we could find that would be a similar feel to it. So let's grab a nice fresh modern image here. Obviously you may still want to use an image like that, but that one to me does feel a little bit older, a little bit of that era. So we're looking for how can we make this feel a bit more fresh. Maybe you've got an old PDF that you created years ago and you're thinking, how can I freshen this up so it feels exciting and new again? And this is what you can do. You can use your old content and redesign it to make it feel fresh and new again. So the colors that they're using in this brand is obviously a lot of blues. So let's put a blue in. So instantly we're feeling a little bit fresher. Now we want to add in this grow your blog traffic. You can see here there's too much variation because we've got that grow and then we've got the your blog and then traffic. And so there's too much variation. To then combine it with this huge long tagline down the bottom here, it just feels like there's so much going on and that is overwhelming to the eye. We want to grab attention with a cover, make someone to go, ooh, that looks interesting. I want to know more about that. Not sort of feel overwhelmed by it. So we want to keep it more simple. So let's find an area where we can add our text. And so that we're not too dark here with too much color, we might just go white. So it's grow your blog traffic. So let's choose some fonts that feel a bit more fresh and modern. So we'll just start by putting it in. Right, so when you're choosing a font, it's really about how you want to position it. So if we wanted this to feel very high end and feel like it's a real quality thing, then we might want to have a more quality looking font. Something like a really nice serif font. Whereas if we want this to feel more approachable or friendly, we might want a more clean sans serif font. So it's really about how do you want to actually position your PDF? Who do you want it to appeal to? What kind of person? Where are they in their journey? So the choice of fonts can really affect that. So still you'd want to be using your brand fonts for your own products, but think about, well, which font would I use for this? What's appropriate for the person who would be interested in this product? So this is a title, so we want to keep it close together. Similar to a logo, you want that proximity, things close together. So we want to make that line spacing a bit tighter so it feels more like it's all together as a title. So now we've got our subtitle. And so now, as you can see, it's feeling a lot cleaner. Now, the color I feel feels a little bit off. I think this was probably their branding colors, but to me, I feel like it needs to be a little bit darker. It needs to just those colors just feel a little bit cheap to me. Sure, you could find the right imagery that makes it work, but to me, it just really elevates it to go for a darker blue in this case, and I feel like it goes really well with that image. So obviously, if you're creating something for your own brand, you do want to go with your own brand colors, so make sure that you choose imagery that will actually complement your colors too. But I just want to really think about how can we elevate this, how can we make this look really good, and I think a darker, richer blue is going to look really good. So we might even add that blue into the title there. And then we're going to need to add the name. So here we could add a logo or just their name down the bottom. So we'll just put down here and in white and just write brand name. So as you can see, something like that feels a lot less busy. If you look at this one, it feels like there's so much going on. Where does the eye look? What's most important? You just see grow, traffic, then your blog, and then, oh, look at that camera. And it just sort of is all over the place. And so there's too much going on there. Here you can see it really simplifies it. You just see that grow your blog traffic. Oh, okay, that's interesting. And so you're going to want to then read the more details on it. And it's just nice and simple. So it's not overwhelming or confusing someone going, oh, what is this? They quite quickly can look at it and understand it. Now looking in some text. So most of the pages within this are quite similar where all the text just goes straight across the page. There was the odd image like screenshots like this sort of thing, but it doesn't really break it up. So it can feel very heavy to the reader. It's not the same as reading a book when you read a PDF. When you're reading a book, you know, you've got this physical thing and you're reading a story. When people are going through PDFs, they tend to be skimming more. And when you are creating something that's just text heavy like this, it can actually feel a bit too much and overwhelming, and they can end up missing important things. So what we can do is break up the text and also emphasize elements that are important to bring people's attention to those most important parts. So I do like the fact that they've added these little elements to the top and bottom, that sort of thing. It can definitely add to it. So maybe if we just change the colors up. So that wasn't centered. I don't know if that was just how it went when I imported it to Canva or whether it was always a bit off. So as you can see, something like that still looks good if we just updated it to new colors and new font. It was still a nice design element, so there's nothing wrong with that. Having these little extra things in your page does add interest too. Having things like little title bits or having a nice thing for down the bottom or for where your page numbering is, all that sort of thing. So first of all, titles. So this PDF did not have any kind of title pages, so pages that introduce different sections. This can be great to really break things up, but this didn't do that. So we might do this for when we hit chapter 1 here. I'm not going to go through the whole PDF, don't worry. We're just going to look at a few pages just to look at ways we could improve things. So first of all, we want to make a better introduction. So maybe we should use this same font here. Introduction. So what would you expect to see in an introduction? Well, you're getting to know the person behind this, who wrote it, their story, that sort of thing. So what would be great on this sort of page? Well, a picture of that person. So all this text, it can be overwhelming. So we may actually cut down a little bit of text because you may actually want to think about, if you have a lot of text like this, putting it over more than one page because it can be overwhelming. Don't worry about having something that's, lots of pages if you've kept it really interesting. So people are interested looking through it, or if you're just trying to push in heaps and heaps of text into something, it can just feel too much and overwhelming again. So it's all about making it easier for the reader, and making it easier for someone to go through it so it doesn't feel like, whoa, this is too much. And then they just put it in a folder somewhere because they're like, oh, another day when I've got more time. If you've made it so that someone can quickly skim, look for the information that interests them, help them quickly see what this is about, they're more likely to want to go through it straight away because it's not going to feel like too much to them. So let's find a picture of a person. So we're just going to grab this guy because he seems to suit the colouring we've got here. So we're just going to add this in. So another thing you want to be doing is thinking about lining things up. So here you can see I just hit it against that margin line. Now I'm going to put the text there on that margin line on that side, and I'm going to put it across like that. So as you can see, we've got room for that image. We've got that text. We're going to cut down on how much text is in one page. So then we're going to have some still go across. It's okay to have some sections go right across, but if everything goes across the page, it feels like a lot. Whereas if we're doing something like this, we've broken it up. Even though it's still quite a lot of text, it's not quite as overwhelming because we've sort of broken it up a little bit. Now we can also do things like pull quotes, maybe pull a certain section out and add a little pull quote in there. We could highlight things, so we could go grab a block. Let's just say this section here was an important bit that we wanted to sort of highlight, maybe a key section. Then we can put the text within that. And see, something like that again, it breaks it up. We're sort of highlighting a section there and it doesn't feel quite as heavy. As you can see, that page is feeling a little bit lighter now and easier to consume. So we could also highlight bits. So we could say, I never had the confidence to put myself out there. Maybe we'll say that was an important part of the story. So we could highlight that. We could make it bold. So we could sort of bring attention to certain key parts of the story. So then as people read this, it's not feeling too much. So you also want to consider spacing here. So you notice the amount of space we've got there between each paragraph. So making it all feel cohesive and nice, and see the difference of that. So from something that was real text heavy like this, to something like that, it was tiny tweaks of just adding in imagery, making it less condensed, so not as much text at once, and then highlighting the certain bits. And look at that, it's made such a difference to how that looks. So let's go into chapter 1 here. So let's just do one page like this. So let's say instead of just boring straight away we hit a chapter, we actually have a title page. So what we can do is grab a nice image. You'd probably want to pick out something that was relevant to the chapter, but we'll just grab something random today just to get it done. Now we can add in a square that goes on top. That can be for our title. Now, of course, there's plenty of ways you can do a title, but again, you don't want to overdo it. Keep it fairly simple. So we can say start with, and so that's chapter 1. So then we want some text to write that. Like that. We could even add a little divider line. And you can see something like that helps break it up. So if someone's looking through your contents page, looking for a certain section, something that really strikes their interest, having those individual title pages helps them just quickly find that section because it's more obvious. If you just see something like this where it's tiny, chapter 1, you might easily skip past that page and go, oh, I can't find it, where is it? And you're going back and forth. If it's nice and big and bold where that chapter actually is, it's going to be so much easier for them to skim through and find the things that they want to know about that's relevant to them. When they're going through a PDF, especially if it's a longer one, they may not be interested in absolutely everything. So if you made it really easy to skim, find different sections, find different bits of information, they're going to actually benefit more from it because they can find the bits that are relevant, that are going to help them, and they're not going to feel like, oh, this is so overwhelming, it's going to take me ages to actually dig through and find the things that I want. So maybe let's do a page that has an image in it to show how we could maybe do this a little bit better. And we could use this again and put our image into that. So sort of use it like a frame that it sits in. So it's that consistency too, is if you use certain colors, certain elements like blocks and that, using those things over and over again, it helps make that overall design feel very cohesive and like it all fits together. So this one, we don't have any titles. We've just got this information. So we could start with this. So sort of like we're halfway through a chapter or just in a section. And then it says, you can see mine below. And we could have that in there. Then maybe some of this text we can start to break up a bit more interesting. So maybe we could do columns. So we could go on one side. I don't know why that went a bit weird. Now obviously one of these pages is a page where there's maybe a little bit less going on, so it's less exciting, but we can still break up our text in ways that just makes it feel a little bit easier to read. And again, just like that other page before, you can highlight certain bits of text too. So here, know why you're posting something, we could put that in bold, or we could even have like a pull-out quote. So what we could do is add something like this, and we could make some bigger text. and write in no what. So think about things too that you really want to be key messages that people get from it. So you sort of emphasize those things of this is important, take note of this, that sort of a thing. So then we've got here a section, so we've got a subtitle here, so we can use this again, but because this isn't a main title, it's a subtitle, we could just do it a bit smaller. So we could use something like that, but go a little bit smaller. So we can have that there as a little title, and then some of the text under. So obviously what I'm showing you is that you'd start to expand that out. We'd probably be turning 1 page worth of content into 2 pages now so that we're breaking it out a bit more, making it more interesting. But can you see how much neater and more well designed that looks? We haven't gone overboard, we haven't done crazy designs. We've just sort of broken up the text in better ways, added a little bit of color here and there, and we've got a much nicer design that's easier to consume. All right, let's look at another one. So this one I picked out because it has a few different things. So we can look at a contents page. We can also look at adding workbook pages. So I just picked out just these few, and we've also got here some checkboxes. So this is just so we can look at something a little bit different. So it's not just the same stuff again. We can look at how we can approach something that's a little bit more workbook style, where we've got things that we can fill in. So as you can see, it's quite dull. So it's very basic, very simple, but also it is old. It's 2015. So again, sometimes you might have these great pieces of content, but they just need freshening up, make them fresh and new. So let's have a look at what we can do. So first of all, let's think about this title page. So I'm not really sure what this drawing has to do with this, because it's Simple Living Handbook. So it's to do with decluttering and making life simpler. So maybe it's about, decluttering and folding up a bit of paper. I'm not too sure. It's not so obvious. It's kind of confusing. Maybe it had something to do with the person who created it. Maybe it was part of their branding. But if you just looked at this, you'd be like, well, what's that about? And it doesn't really click. We really want to use imagery that has something to do with what it is to help people make sense of what they're looking at. So let's think of an image that would be more relevant. So we can put in decluttering. All right, so it's bringing up some images here of people working on decluttering, tidying up their house. So you could definitely find something that feels relevant. Of course, if it's your own thing, you may even want to do a photo shoot and create your own imagery that's relevant. So you don't necessarily have to use stock images either. You can take photos yourself to make something that really is going to suit. So let's find something that feels good. So maybe we could use something like this, but we won't use the person. So let's update this. Let's make this the 24. Now this one we might be able to, as you can see here, put the text directly on the image. Now you can only do this if there's good contrast. Because this image is a little bit dark, we can put a light text on top and it's still readable. Only do that if you've got high contrast. If you don't, that's when you're going to want some sort of block, something behind it in between the image and the text so that it's readable. So really make sure you do think about that. So we might put that on other bits here. So we'll put the header. Now this is about simple living and decluttering. So we want a font that feels very, very clean. So maybe we could go for Futura. So it feels a little bit fresher, but it's also very nice and clean. Now for this thing that says phase 2, let's put a block behind it so that it's easier to read. So the color she was using, it's mostly black. There's a little bit of green there. So maybe we could use the green. And it sort of suits this because you've got that little bit of plant there, that green, so it suits. We could make it a little bit lighter though, I think. And then we might make the word phase 2 bold so that you can sort of see what that is. So otherwise it looks like a lot of text there. If we have that phase 2 highlighted, you can make that clear. So if there was a first book and this is the second book, this is phase 2, it's quite clear that that is phase 2. Then are you ready to let go? We might actually bring it up here so that we can do it like this. I don't know why it has those lines on the end there. It does look a bit odd like that. It's better this. Maybe we can put it in all uppercase, and again choose that same font, And there we go. We've tidied up the cover. We haven't been overly designed. We haven't gone too crazy. We've just made something that's a little bit more interesting so that it's really clear what this is. And we've got some visuals there to help somebody understand it better. Now, I do feel like it still has a little bit too much text because it had that phase 2 bit on it. Then are you ready to let go? Maybe that is too much. Maybe it could go down the bottom. We have some color behind it. To me, I feel like that's a bit too much text and maybe it would be better without it. So I may even add a little bit more gap here between the actual title and the phase 2 bit so that it doesn't feel too much all in one area. So that does feel a bit better. You could always put the phase 2 down the bottom too if you didn't want too much up the top there. So there's different ways you could do that, but as you can see, that just cleans it up. It feels a little bit more interesting but not over the top either. Right, so now the contents page. So again, like the other book, we want our titles to stand out a bit more. So we might keep with this Futura, but we might want to make it a bit bigger. Now we might want to make this contents page feel a bit more interesting. Now one way we could do that is just adding in color blocks. So we don't have to add heaps of fancy things to make something more interesting. So we could just have maybe a color block down the side here. Have the word over here, contents. Like even just doing that, just adding that color block suddenly makes this, just lifts the page. It just feels a little bit more interesting. Now, some contents pages you can be more interesting with that, have some imagery in there or have big numbers and create a really nice design. But a contents like this where there's a lot of pages, you probably don't want to over design it because there's a lot. So you don't want to over design that because then it can feel more confusing because then you have to have lots and lots of contents pages to fit it all in. So if you have a lot and you want to keep it just on one page, you know, too many contents pages, sometimes just that simple, just text list can work well. So I will show you some other examples. So for example, you can have a contents page where you have your numbers really big if you don't have too many things in your contents page, or you could have little summaries of what's in each one. But obviously if you start doing things like this, you don't want too many sections. If you've got a lot of sections, sometimes simpler is best. So really assess what's going to work for the amount of content you've got. So let's just update the font. So if we select everything here, we go for the Futura. I just make it small and make sure it works. And see, that looks really nice and clean. Now you would want to go through and actually make each of these line up as well. As you can see, they don't line up. Now that could just be because the font I chose made them a bit different, but you would want to make sure that they all lined up. So if we grab them just as an example, some of them are connected to the text, some aren't. That's a bit odd. So it could just be because I imported this into Canva, but just so you can see, just trying to make sure it all ends in the same spot. That makes things look really neat. So I'm not going to go through and do that all now because it's a bit time consuming, but you understand what I mean is you just want it to everything to be lined up and neat. So notice those little things because sometimes those tiny little things can make the biggest difference to making something look really well designed versus looking poorly designed. So if we got lines instead, so if you just imagine we put each of these as a line, so you made them all the same and then you'd fix the ends, and then what you can do to double check, you would grab them all and go to position, and you'd want to make sure on right so they all hit that exact same right. And then you'd also want to do vertically to make sure there's the same gap between each one. So you'd want to go through and do that for all yours to make sure it all lines. And that's going to make something like that look very neat and tidy. Whereas as you can see right now, it looks a bit messy because they're all finishing in slightly different spots and it looks a mess. But you can also see that just adding that little bit of color and just neatening things up makes this page look so much more well designed. Okay, so workbook pages, again, we want to make our headline bigger. As you can see, it was quite small. Headlines need to be at least, at the very, very least, twice the size of your regular text. Often it looks better when it's quite a lot bigger. So first we're just going to update this text. Put that down. All right, so what are some ways we could make this page more interesting? So the way she's done the lines here, it looks like she's just text written in the lines, which is a little bit messy, so we might get rid of them. What's also messy here is how the text is spread out like that. So when it comes to spacing, see this, how we've got here justify? What that does is make it go from one end to the other, and that can actually look quite messy like that. So we'd want to make sure it's all left aligned. All right, so if you wanted to add in lines, you can do that. You can go into elements and grab lines. You'd want to use the line graphic, not text right in lines, or we can add in just boxes. So think about the people who are writing in here. Would they prefer lines, or would they prefer boxes, or just your personal preference for what you prefer to design? You want to make sure that the color is light enough that people can write in it and see what they've written. Now these numbers seem a bit messy too. They're detached for some reason. So we want to align everything. So let's get rid of any excess here. Line everything up so it all lines up. Make sure that lines up. So little things like making sure everything is aligned, so important to make something look neat. So making sure it's all lined up. And so what we can also do, you can go into File, Settings, Show Margins. So you can make sure it all lines up on that margin. Then we can grab all our boxes and make sure they line up onto the other margin. And then that way things can be consistent across all pages too. As you work on each page in your design, you're using those exact same margins to line things up. And it helps you notice things too that you might visually look at and you don't notice straight away that there's a problem. But by having those margins in there, it helps you notice, like that was just, you know, if that was slightly out, you visually might notice that when there's no margin line. But when you see that margin line, it becomes more obvious, oh, that one was out of line. And making sure everything's lined up is definitely going to make a big difference, making your thing look professional. So that looks a lot neater. We could have done a bit more with this page if we wanted to, but this PDF was about simplifying, about keeping things, you know, simplifying, decluttering. So to go along with that theme, you probably want a design that's not too cluttered, too over-designed. We want something that feels simple and clean too. So probably just keep it simple like that. As you can see though, it just, you know, it's simple design, not overly, you know, not over the top, not too many fancy bits here and there, but it's just nice and clean, neat and professional. So then we can have checklists. So we won't do everything because I know that will take a while. But we might, for this one, to make it more interesting, maybe have a color background. So let's say we decided to make this one a color. So maybe to make those the checklist pages stand out, maybe we have a color background on those pages. So we've got the regular pages just white, and then the checklist ones colored to really, you know, stand out. So as you go through looking for things, you say, oh, there's the checklist page, and it's really obvious. And that again creates some consistency across the board because, you know, every checklist page would have this design and style, and then they'd be easy to spot throughout the actual ebook. Now we might make then a white square so then the page isn't too overly colored. Then we can add our checkboxes. So we can just simply use a square. You can choose a color. Now it's probably too dark if you want to actually put a check in it. So you can do a solid color or you can do an outline. So we could always do an outlined one instead. And maybe the color inside really light. And maybe because that's the section, maybe we could put that one in bold. I don't know if I've got, yeah, picture heavy, there we go. So it stands out, and then you can sort of really clearly see that each section would be a different one because the way she's done it is each section is a different part of your house. And then we've got a question underneath too. So you could have that as a separate bit. So ask yourself, and then maybe we could have a little box You know, how can I improve this? And a little section where someone can actually fill that in. As you can see, just doing these little tidy ups, it makes the different sections clear. The way she had it before, it felt a bit all over the place. Like, what's that for? What's this? We're really cleaning things up so that it's clear to someone how this actually works. So since kitchen was a big checkbox, maybe we'll make these little ones. Now again, to line up checkboxes, so they're nice and neat, you're going to select them all, then position, and you're going to choose this one, tidy up, and that will put them all nicely aligned. So it really feels like she created this in something like Word, because a lot of it's text-based. There's not much in the way of actual graphics, which I understand if somebody isn't a designer, they want to get something out there, they may just be using things like that. But that's what I love about Canva, is it makes it simple to do things like this. You don't have to have any fancy design software. Just as an example, so I know I haven't put the exact text in, but you can just see how that looks so much neater. So you could then have, you could just simply copy that over and have your next section or whatever. If you realize it's too long, obviously you can make things smaller, make it all fit. So you just want to fiddle around to get it just right. But it makes it so much clearer what's going on here, because before she had so many things all on one page, it felt a little messy and overwhelming. As you can see, something like that, if we had two different areas of the house like that, it just feels a lot more clearer what's going on. This is one section, that's another section. Oh, this is a question area once I've done the tick boxes. And it's so much clearer about what is going on and makes it easy to use. It's all about the user. Think about the user and making the experience easy for them. So as you can see, that's so much neater and tidier. So I hope this has inspired you to take a look at some of the PDFs that you're currently putting out there into the world and how you might be able to improve the designs of them. Now, of course, if you'd like to learn more about branding, graphic design, creativity, and using Canva, make sure you subscribe to this channel, and I will see you next time.